Alright, fine. I'll make an actual video talking about my experiences with Quinton Reviews.
Bit of a different setup today. You guys will bear with me. I'm moving. So finally, we have some unserious drama to unpack. This is nothing that nobody requested, but YouTube literally kept shoving Quentin's video in my face until I clicked on it. I don't think most of you would even know what the hell is even happening here, so I will briefly break it down. But as always, do keep in mind, I am not a drama recap channel. I make pompous video essays in reference to society while using pop cultural events as backdrops. The overall point of this essay will be to explore the other side of pushing creators and influencers to accept increased responsibility. Sometimes certain people will take this concept and spin disingenuous stories of mistrust or inappropriate power dynamics with an influencer.
Hey guys, it's Flower Gothic. Now, as you know, I have recently entered my villain era, and I want to take my power back from the people who have abused my trust before.
In these types of cases, the holding an influencer accountable trope becomes nothing more than a vessel of attempting to mobilize certain gullible audience members into attacking said influencer. And that is precisely what we have here. These kind of events are essential to talk about to distinguish between when a complaint or grievance is valid and when accountability should be taken. And before we get into this, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And also check out my Patreon if you do so wish. But without further ado, let's take a dive.
And hey, maybe I'm being petty, but even 2 years later, I'm still pissed off at him for what he did. On July 7th, Quinton of Quinton Reviews posted a video titled Responding to Everything on his second channel where he details his past online friendship and working relationship with another smaller creator by the handle name Flower Gothic. Quinton Reviews is a large review channel that covers various forms of media, his most popular being his in-depth breakdowns of Nickelodeon TV series like Victorious or iCarly, which was actually the first of these massive videos. The only other drama or discourse per se that I know precedes this particular creator's name was a very odd instance from about a couple of years ago where he would randomly start embedding political takes within his media related videos.
You can't even get mad anymore about this stuff because it's like if I got mad about stuff like that, I would just I'd just be like a very unhappy person all the time. It's just, I'm not angry, I'm disappointed movie.
So, here's the thing. I fucking hate Trump. He embarrasses me every day. He makes us all look like backwards idiots, and frankly, the fact that he got elected means that we probably are all backwards idiots. He's ruining people's lives. He's making horrible racist decisions, which are probably going to have long-lasting repercussions long after he's out of office. Overall, I would be a much happier person if we found a way to deport him from every position of power that he has ever had.
Probably most notably about that situation is that he bashed another creator by the name of JonTron by calling him racist.
Saying that every angry gamer is trying to be James Rolfe is like saying that every racist gamer is trying to be JonTron.
This was more than likely in reference to JonTron's mishappened debate that he did a couple of years ago where he utilized racist argumentation for reasons.
Okay, so do you think that poor blacks probably commit more crime relative to wealthier black people?
They do. Wealthy blacks also commit more crime than poor whites. That's a fact.
Wait, what?
Yeah, look it up.
Looking back at this happening surrounding Quentin, it is pretty funny. He was just out here causing controversy for literally no reason at all. Back in 2021, Quentin employed the creator Flower Gothic, whom he originally met at some type of Garfield convention, as a gig editor for the first of his large-scale video projects. The recollections of both of these creators are different, of course, and all screenshots provided, which were limited in both cases, were incidental to their individual takes. Because I feel like Quentin has provided more detail, I will lead with his narrative and interject with Flower Gothic's as needed where she contradicts him. Prior to establishing a working relationship, both parties have attested to having regular interactions on Quentin's Discord server, and from the little that was provided by both parties, it seems to have been normal, everyday, friendly interactions. Flower Gothic was employed by Quentin after passing an audition of sorts.
I recorded the audio for the iCarly pilot review, and I told everyone who applied to try and edit that audio with video from the episode, try and edit that together into a review in my style. And basically my goal was I'd see who could figure out the style, who could make content that looked like it was for my channel. And starting off,
hours of my May 16, 2021, editing Quentin's thoughts on the pilot, which was the tryout everyone who applied had to do. So yeah, I was hired like immediately. Was there a contract? No. Why didn't I ask for one? 2 reasons. 1, this was my very first real editing gig. I was fresh to the scene, as they say, and honestly, I had no clue that contracts were a necessity. 2, I had a major admiration for Quentin. I thought, hey, he's worked with people before. He knows the drill. I placed my trust in him.
The first project sent to Flower was of raw footage of his analysis of season 1 of iCarly. He stated in his response video that his original plan for this was to have an editor take 2 to 4 reads to complete the editing of each of his analysis, broken down by seasons. However, to his surprise, Flower turned around the final product in under 3 days.
I was expecting I would record like a whole season of audio at once. Then I would send it off to an editor, and then they would spend 2 to 4 weeks editing. And my plan was, as they spent a couple weeks editing, then I would start writing and recording the next season of content. And then I would send that content to another editor. So the plan was I'd have numerous editors kind of doing this at once. So there was no pressure for one editor to kind of like rush through material so they could immediately jump on another episode.
Flower stated in her video that she missed out on her school courses and activities with friends and family in order to produce this content in such a short amount of time.
In total, I was working about 7 hours a day on that iCarly video, along with school and my own content. And as I said before, I was the sole guest editor for seasons 1 and 2.
And this is where we hit one of the first snags in Flower's story. She nor Quentin has shown any evidence that an actual solidified timeline was agreed upon in the DMs they've shared. However, I find it very difficult to believe that a YouTuber who is familiar with editing his own content and contracted out editing because he recognized what a massive job this was going to be would require such a quick turnaround time. Flower even stated in her testimony that she wanted to impress Quentin with her timeliness, which leads me to believe that Quentin more than likely did indeed set a reasonable initial due date. This is very contradictory to Flower Gothic's accusation of Quentin overworking her as an editor, because she is the one who decided to sacrifice her life for this editing job. From what we know, he did not request that of her.
I worked 6 or 7 hours a day on that video over the span of a little over a month, to the point where I had to skip class from time to time to get the video done. I wanted it to succeed.
I never asked you to do that. I never asked you to skip out on sleep. I never asked you to turn around a 90-minute timeline in 3 days. I never requested those things.
Because of Flower's quick turnaround time, which far exceeded the timeline he originally planned, Quentin actually didn't have anything for Flower to work on immediately, something she reacted very despondently to.
The weird thing that ended up starting to happen was that she started being really, really impatient about getting new stuff to cut down.
He would take forever to send me the assets. It left me on the edge, constantly on my toes throughout August and September. And remember, I was the sole editor. There were times I had to beg him for the fucking assets for me to do my job. I even expressed my grievances via message.
And this is so strange to me because gig workers, is that proper etiquette? Is it normal to pressure the person you're contracted by into giving you additional work when they are not ready because you completed another project ahead of schedule? Regardless, Quentin responded, in my perception, very kindly to this. It is also worth noting that in his response video, Quentin pointed out that the work that Flower produced was very obviously rushed and not to the quality that he originally expected, subsequently leading him to spend another week editing that video. He stated that he did not communicate this with Flower and still contracted her again for the second portion of his iCarly deep dive. Poor decision, mate. At some point, Flower began drunkenly messaging Quentin about her romantic interest in him, something that she left out in her 2 expose videos on Quentin. It's okay, I'm sure it was just an accident, guys.
The point is that shortly after iCarly Part 2 came out, she sent me what was the first message that really set off red alarms, something's wrong. So this is after she was not on the payroll. I didn't know about any of this until after she had stopped working for me, because there was a span after she stopped working for me where she was just kind of one of my friends, and then in October shit went down. But this is what happened straight after iCarly Part 2 came out. Hey, I'm fucking tired and quite drunk, so I have no shame in asking this anymore. But what do you think of me? It's been something that's been occupying my head for such a fucking long time, and I've been too anxiety-ridden to ask because I don't want to drive people away from me. Fuck, I really like you, and I think you're cute, and you're a wonderful person, but I guess I always fear that other people think of me. I guess I always fear what other people think of me. Later on, she sent me notes from watching episodes of Victorious. She had gotten heavily intoxicated while taking these notes, and in the notes was again a statement that she had feelings for me. And I just had this sense that things were gonna get bad. And then late into the night of October the 31st, she sent me this message. I guess technically it was in November, but the point is she sent me this message, which again I would typically not release, but she's kind of forced my hand. Hey Quentin, so there isn't any good way to sugarcoat this, and I'm tired as hell and quite drunk. Again, she's drunk. So I'm just gonna say it now and let future deal with the fallout. I think I have feelings for you. Like, I like you. I like you. Yes, in that way. I think you're just so fucking cute and sweet and amazing.
Though both mentioned instances made Quentin uncomfortable, he responded cordially.
But I was hoping if I ignored the problem, it would go away. This is what I wrote. I think you're an awesome, funny person and a great friend, and I'm grateful to have you around. Now get some rest, hun. And then I wrote, you, my homie.
In his video, he does critique himself for not being more straightforward with her the first time and being firmer in setting his boundaries.
I should not have approached that this way at any point. I should have been more blunt and upfront.
But I don't necessarily agree with that. He responded a way that a friend would have. He didn't encourage the behavior and very visibly friend-zoned Flower Gothic. The second time Flower reached out to Quentin romantically, he sent her a friendly dissertation explaining in great detail why he was not interested in her. And again, I find this to be very kind and exceedingly gentle. But most importantly, it was definitely more firm in the answer of no. It was after this second rejection in November of 2021, where Flower began accusing Quentin of manipulating and using her. We could quickly catalog Flower's grievances with Quentin as follows: manipulating her into overperforming, abusing her feelings that she describes as friendship and he describes as unreciprocated romantic interest, but nevertheless abusing them to have her do excessive amounts of work for low pay and under poor working conditions. Notably, I have not been able to find any other grievances from any other of Quentin's editors, both past and present, that provided similar accounts as Flower's. This matters because Flower Gothic constantly boasts that this is an issue that all of Quentin's editors face, rather than just a bad experience that she personally had.
I know he hasn't changed as a boss, but that's someone else's story to tell.
In other words, she's presenting this as if it is a pattern of behavior, which is a big buzzword online right now. And again, I do want to stress that all of this happened back in 2021, but for some reason, it's getting rehashed again by Flowers. Now, based on the little information available here, this drama does not seem particularly relevant to us, as in the viewers. It seems more like an interpersonal issue that Flower Gothic should have either sorted out with Quentin or completely gotten over in the last few years. Nevertheless, it was brought to the internet, so of course we're gonna have opinions on it, especially since Flower Gothic issued a call to action.
What happened to me isn't Quentin's only sin. For all I know, it could just be the beginning. Share this to the people you know, and let's find out.
When you issue a call to action, you are indeed asking for people outside of your beef to get involved. Can't help it if it's not the way that you suspected. What seems to be happening here is Flowers has attached herself to a very common narrative. Influencers should be held accountable for their effects on both their audiences and how they interact with others in general. The problem here is, very plainly, I don't believe her recount, or at least I don't believe the malicious spin she put on her account. I don't believe that her grievances are truly valid. I also don't believe that her response, or rather responses, were even near appropriate for the situation at hand. Even within her own video, there are screenshots that work against the narrative that she tells. She states that Quentin didn't care about her health, but she posts a screenshot where he's offering to obtain additional editors and encouraging her to take a break. She also also posts a screenshot of her list of issues with Quentin and then says that he never gave her a genuine apology at the end of all of this. But the apology she shows from him did all the things a proper apology is supposed to do. He showed that he understood where she was coming from, explained what was happening on his end without erasing her feelings, showed how he could have been better, and he explicitly stated, "I'm sorry," multiple times. At some point, Julia, you just have to say that you simply do not accept his apology because you feel hurt, not because the apology was bad. And I would be very remiss to point out that she didn't explain this little top portion here. This is what she sent to Quentin after he rejected her romantic interest. Without her explicitly explaining this context, it makes her look very vindictive. It's possible for her to have true concerns about Quentin's working conditions and standards without her feelings of rejection getting involved, but that's not what I'm seeing here. This section is in part titled Disproportional Responses because yes, I am going to take the stance that making 2 videos and a tweet thread about a dude who paid you for your work and apologized when he really didn't have to is disproportionate. For Julia to have brought this entire situation up after the reactions to Colleen Ballinger and her lack of accountability, diligence, or care towards her audience does not seem accidental to me. It seemed very calculated and hella vindictive, but it's also somewhat our fault too. And by us, I am referring to both commentators and essayists that are known to, in a way, set the standards for public callouts and apologies, but also some audience members too. Y'all ain't dissolved. I ain't in this alone. Many YouTube channels who review apology videos or go over certain online discourses have a certain narrative to them. You can see it very easily in how people like Nick is Not Green versus Brian Beard talks about the same issue. Their talking points are usually the same, though one might expand on something more than the other did. This shouldn't be surprising considering their baseline perspectives and ideology mostly align in general, so it's not really a thing of them copying each other. Their views are just predictable when compared to one another because they tend to follow the same set of core principles. What this inadvertently does is give the illusion of solidified narrative amongst normally left-wing or left-leaning commentators. The person of topic in these dramas sees this consensus and tries to emulate an apology or an explanation that tangibly shows that they are engaged with these conversations. That's where the weird disclosures of things like scripting come into play, because many commentators have said that it's bad to script an apology. That's where we see the phrases of "I want to take accountability" or "I'm working to educate myself." These people are trying to hit every single point made by commentators because they're either trying to address all points of confusion or appeal to the massive audience of the commentators to come out of internet purgatory more easily and quickly. So we all know the talking points, right? We all know what commentators say are good apologies and how they typically analyze dramas. Good-natured or interested people who have no underlying motives are not the only ones privy to this type of content, of course. People like Julia are also watching, but her intent is obviously very different. She isn't trying to hold this man accountable, and even if she was, what should he be held accountable for exactly? For paying her, an inexperienced editor who did not set any boundaries for herself and admittingly overworked herself, not because he asked her to, but because she wanted to impress him? Are we holding him accountable for paying her the wages that she asked for? Should those wages have been more? Maybe. I don't know. Gig editors sound off in the comments. I really don't know. And frankly, I don't care, because it shouldn't be any of my goddamn business what happened between 2 individuals several years ago. Unless a pattern of intentional underpayment occurs, I don't know why this was ever brought forth to the people. She verbally states that Quentin has a pattern of behavior with this, but I have yet to see that theory be brought to actualization. Normally, I would give her the benefit of the doubt, but she doesn't really inspire many feelings of trust in me. So until I see someone else actually come forward, What was the most malicious thing that Julia did, which is why I have almost completely written her off, is at the end of her video where she's stating that other editor of Quentin's have had the same issue, but that isn't her story to tell. She tries to bait people into caring more about canceling Quentin by name dropping both Lindsay Ellis and Sarah Zed.
I know he hasn't changed as a boss, but that's someone else's story to tell. I know that he was indeed creepy to Sarah Zed and Lindsay Ellis in Twitter DMs. I know the content of those DMs, but that's someone else's story to tell.
So let me get this straight. An editor's story of underpayment is not your story to tell, but it is your story to tell to name drop two prominent internet figures and their alleged experiences of sexual misconduct with Quentin, as she so vaguely implied. Cool story. From what we have learned thus far, this drama is so unimportant, and I don't think it was good faith on Julia's part in any way. But it was a pretty ridiculous, unserious situation we could look at to understand how certain narratives online can indeed be weaponized. And that is all I have for you today, guys. Pretty short video for once in my life. Please remember to like and subscribe because I have more videos and deep dives on the way. And be sure to check out my Patreon for exclusive content. So until next time, bye.